Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and don't forget to hit that little bell button down below, because then it'll notify you whenever I upload new content. And of course, don't forget to follow me on my social media. All those links are down below. Today I thought I would tackle a kind of tricky subject, which is those things that everybody seems to know about transgender people, but aren't actually true. You know, things like we're cool and know everything about sex. That is most definitely not true. I mean, some of us are and some of us do, but we're no different than the rest of the population in that regard. Perhaps the most prominent one that I hear over and over again in Twitter feeds and in arguments against transgender people is that being transgender is a mental illness, and it is not. And in fact, in the latest diagnostic manual for psychologists, it is no longer listed as gender identity disorder, but gender dysphoria. And the World Health Organization recently made a similar change in June to list it as a sexual health issue, which is probably the best description there is for it. But really, it's no surprise that people see it as a mental health issue for a few reasons, one of which is that gender dysphoria comes with a lot of mental distress. But there are a whole host of conditions that cause that aren't mental health issues either. In fact, if you look at the diagnostic manual for psychologists, you'll find other conditions there listed like sleep apnea, because those things take a mental toll as well, and it's good for psychologists to be able to recognize what those things are. And like being transgender, a lot of these things can't be solved with just therapy. Because let's face it, that's what they're implying when they're saying that being transgender is just a mental illness. Then it's best left to psychologists to solve. That also implies that any physical things you do to change your body if you're a transgender person is really just feeding into that delusion. And then really what we're talking about is conversion therapy for transgender people, which doesn't work for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer people, and it doesn't work for transgender people either. I once read that 97% of the time conversion therapy fails for the LGBTQ, but it's that 3% that the religious right really holds on to. If it doesn't work for you, it's because you didn't have enough faith, which is a great way to blame the victim and not take any personal responsibility for the conditions under which transgender people live. So you want to know why we have a suicide rate above 40%? It isn't an inherent part of being transgender. It's because of all the hate we receive. It's really hard to live in a world that's constantly telling you that you are just wrong, to be made fun of on television, to be excluded from sex-segregated spaces, to be told that you're really not a lesbian and you're not deserving of love, that you're less than because of something that is totally out of your control, and to be told that not just by strangers, but your family members, that your lived experience is somehow a delusion. And because of that, they're not going to make any accommodations for you. Accommodations that you often desperately need just to live and survive. Now, tied to all this, of course, you have to believe that gender identity is something real. And no surprise that a lot of people don't believe it is. It's those conditions that we can't see and we can't touch, and we have to rely on the self-report of somebody. Those are the ones we doubt. So if somebody comes up who looks like a perfectly healthy boy and claims to be a woman, it takes a leap of faith to understand that person. And it's much easier to live in a world where you don't believe it. And we as trans people are saying, nope, the world really isn't that way. And I think we hurt ourselves by the nomenclature we use for gender identity. You know, I've sat in meetings where people go, well, I identify as this or I identify as that. And you know what? I hate that phrase. I hate it with the passion of a million suns, because it sounds so wishy-washy and it lends itself to people saying, well, I identify as an attack helicopter. I mean, we've all heard that meme. But you know what? I don't identify as anything. I am a woman. Gender identity is not just a belief, and I think that's the common misconception. People don't just believe they're gender non-conforming or gender non-binary or a woman or a man despite the physical evidence. They feel it in a very, very physical way. And science seems to be implying that, yeah, there is actually a physical condition underlying all of this. A pilot study on about 30 transgender people in the United States recently found that there may actually even be a DNA component to all this. They found 20 gene variants that point in that direction. Is it solid scientific evidence? Not yet. They're going to have to look at many, many more transgender people before they conclude that, yes, this is a thing. But the least surprised people in the room are going to be transgender people. Because believe me, nobody would choose this. Least of all gay people. And by that I mean one of the other common knowledge kind of deals is that gay people transition so that they can be accepted in society. As in, a gay man transitions to become a woman so that he can have sex with men, because women being with men is socially acceptable. And of course that lesbians transition to men because then they can be with women. And to that I say, I can't believe that somebody thought that this was a good idea. We don't transition so that we can have the right parts to have sex with the opposite sex. I mean, does that sound even remotely plausible? It presupposes a whole bunch of things. First of all, being that transgender people are all straight when they transition. And if you've been paying any attention to my channel, you know that I am a card-carrying, pussy-looking lesbian. And I know plenty of gay trans guys. In fact, I had one on my channel recently. I mean, did I miss the point where it became easier to be a trans woman than a gay man? Not saying that gay guys have it easy, but have you tried being a trans woman? Because it is damn hard, and try talking to a trans woman who's straight. She'll tell you that it's super hard to date straight men. In fact, I would venture to guess, and yes, I'm pulling this totally out of my ass, that there's a lot more gay men out there willing to date other gay men than there are straight men willing to date trans women. Another societal bit of wisdom that really bothers me is that being transgender means that you're going to have surgery, or that we're a product of a lot of different medical procedures. Not all of us have had facial feminization surgery, or tracheal shaves, or breast augmentations. In fact, I haven't had any of those things myself. This is what God gave me with the magic of hormones. Some people don't even get hormone therapy. It's enough for them to just gender express as the gender that they know they are. Sometimes for other medical reasons, they can't even take hormones. That doesn't make them any more or less transgender, any more or less men and women, or anything in between. It is an extremely individual experience for all of us. I mean, I hate it when people say, oh, are you a woman yet? In other words, they don't really consider my transition complete until I've had bottom surgery. And how incredibly reductive is that? It makes people their genitals. As women, how can we say that we're more than our body parts on one hand, but then on the other hand say, hey, you really aren't a woman until you have a certain body part? That makes no sense. Now, as somebody who is post-op in that I have had bottom surgery, I have run across this one more times than I'm comfortable with. And that is the assumption that my vagina is actually purely cosmetic, that it's all show and no go. And that's completely not the case. I can feel things with my vagina. In fact, there isn't a part of it at all that is in any way numb or doesn't feel like a part of me. I sit down to pee just like any other woman, and the process is exactly the same. I have a clitoral hood and a clitoris in the same location, and it feels really good when you rub it. Not only do I have a vagina, I can put things in it. I can grip things that are in there. But the only way I'm limited is that I can't really take a big, like, huge dong. But as a lesbian, that isn't really high up on my list of priorities. Anyway, that is of course just a partial list of all those things that I have run across that cisgender people seem to think they know about transgender people that aren't true at all. If you can think of any others, please put them in the comments below, and maybe I'll make another video in the future. And I really do want to hear your thoughts on what I just said too, so please feel free to put those in the comments as well. And on that note, like, share, and subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.